Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray and this is from the South, the evening news brief from Telestio English. We start this new edition right now. Venezuela's Constituent Assembly has sworn in 18 new state governors from the governing Socialist Party elected on Sunday. Hundreds of people gathered outside the National Assembly building in the center of Caracas to welcome the new governors. The 5 governors elected from Venezuela's opposition refused to take their oath before the Constituent Assembly.
The most important thing about October 15th is that we, the Venezuelan people, reaffirm that we want peace. We want to solve our problems in peace, not through conflict. We have the opportunity to solve our problems in harmony and seek a consensus. The Chavistas, the opposition people, and those who don't consider themselves to belong either to one party or the other. We have a great opportunity, not a golden opportunity, but an opportunity made of clay and wood. A great opportunity to build what we want, and I have enormous trust in the opposition factions joining this process as Venezuelans, as common people suffering from the same issues. We hope we can work it out together.
The president of the Constituent Assembly, Delcy Rodriguez, welcomed the governors and took their oath. She urged them to work for peace and sovereignty, which she said is what Venezuelans voted for on Sunday. And she called on the opposition governors to respect that and come to the Constituent Assembly to be sworn in.
Venezuela first sent a message to the President of the United States. It told him that there's no threat capable of submitting the Venezuelan people, and this election must still hurt, be stinging Donald Trump. He should understand what Venezuela's men and women are made of. There is no way, there is no aggression, no sanction, no criminal blockade that he can seek that will bend the will of the people of Venezuela.
Our correspondent Reagan Devines joins us live from Caracas.
Hi Soini, good to hear you. Yeah, it seems like a case of sour grapes for the opposition. When they won control of the National Assembly back in 2015, the government of Nicolas Maduro accepted those results. Now it's a different story. Everyone is crying foul from the opposition camp, including their U.S.-backed supporters and their supporters in Europe as well. So they did not, as you said, they did not show up at the swearing-in process in front of the National Constituent Assembly because they do not hold this body of people to high esteem at all. They do not recognize this group as legitimate, and they said so from the get-go when the National Constituent Assembly was elected back in the end of July. Now, granted, this National Constituent Assembly consists mostly of workers, those in artists, indigenous personalities, many women are involved as well. This National Constituent Assembly is a true cross-section of Venezuela. The opposition believes that there are too many supporters of the government who are part of the National Constituent Assembly, and so they have never recognized this body as legitimate, and so they did not show up today. They actually held a meeting, recently concluded a meeting that went on this afternoon, where they say they are compiling evidence of fraud against the government and against the CNE, the National Electoral Council. And they posted some photographs on Instagram that are supposed to support this claim. So we're going to have to wait this out to see exactly if they're going to launch or officially file these claims of fraud to the CNE, because the CNE needs evidence before they can actually launch an investigation. Meanwhile, as you said as well, hundreds of persons gathered in the National Assembly to witness the swearing-in process of those 18 PSUV governors who, as we all know by now, they won a majority in the regional elections on Sunday. National Constituent Assembly President Delcy Rodriguez said, quote, to the governors. You have a great commitment to guarantee and care for every citizen, as well as the will of each citizen. Take care of it and make it grow. It is the only thing that will guarantee a future of peace, the right to a future, and the right to develop. And head of the National Electoral Council, the CNE, Tibisai Lucena, said she was very happy with what had happened at the regional elections, and the group was happy as well. So we're going to be seeing some things, some not so good things coming out after today, I believe, from the opposition. As I told you earlier, they are compiling, so-called compiling evidence of fraud. Supposedly that took place in the regional elections on Sunday, saying that some votes were deducted from their candidates. So we'll see how this goes, Sonia. That's what I have thus far.
So much for that update, Reagan. Take care. So as Reagan was saying, neither the Venezuelan opposition nor their international allies reacted well to the Chavista victory in the regional elections. The Bolivarian government responded by defending the legitimacy of the electoral process. We have more on this report.
An attack to the electoral system is a political attack against Venezuela. This is what the Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza and the PSUV campaign leader Jorge Rodriguez said in response to allegations of electoral fraud by the Venezuelan opposition and their allies in Washington.
The Colombian system is a manual electoral system. Sometimes people register just by their voice, as they are humble people and poor people without any identification. In zones controlled by the paramilitaries, where you vote with a gun pointed at your back, and they in Colombia have the gall to question the Venezuelan electoral system. Sometimes they are even killed before the elections, and nobody knows about it. Nobody criticizes it, but they can come and criticize our system.
This response is due after Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos criticized the Venezuelan electoral system, tweeting that Venezuela would need more than general elections and an independent National Electoral Council. The victory of Chavismo was not received well in Washington. According to their State Department, the Sunday elections were neither free or fair. And in Europe, the EU's chief of European diplomacy, Federica Mogherini, stated that the results of this Sunday are stunning, and it will be necessary to verify what truly happened. The OAS Secretary, Luis Almagro, took advantage to go and attack Venezuela again. He even criticized the opposition for participating in the elections, especially after 4 months of violence.
It's not possible to recognize a result in an election in a country where there are no guarantees for the effective execution of democracy.
The Venezuelan government released a statement expressing that declarations like the one from Washington give fuel to promote the right-wing violence and chaos in Venezuela.
We say to the world and to Temer's government, but I cannot speak about the percentage of people who elected him, because he is a dictator. Dilma had 54 million votes. He didn't have anyone. And we say to Santos that he was just elected with little more than 30%. And here, just one of the governors won with just 51% of the votes. And we say to Kaczynski that he had just 21% of the votes. So come here and see real democracy. This is what we say to the world. We respect their government and their ideologies and their decision, but we demand respect for us, for our democracy and for our Bolivarian system. The socialism of this century, a legacy of President Chavez.
The Venezuelan opposition recognized the results released by the National Electoral Council, but only for the 5 states where they won a majority at the polls.
The Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, has welcomed Venezuela's peaceful elections at the weekend. Skerrit wrote on Twitter, "Congratulations on the maintenance of the democratic principles during the elections in Venezuela. Congratulations to all who participated." And the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, has also commented on the elections in Venezuela. In a statement, Brown notes that democracy is alive and well in Venezuela. He pointed out that his country opposes interference in Venezuela's internal affairs. Brown cited that the Inter-American Charter is not to be used to remove a democratically elected government. Both countries have had close democratic relationship for almost 45 years, and according to Brown, that relationship remains very strong. Other news now. Here on Tell Us You, we've been traveling across Puerto Rico to see how people are coping after Hurricane Maria. In this report, we see how communities are organizing to solve their hardships themselves.
We're traveling to the center of the island. Outside Utuado, Puerto Rico's third biggest municipality, we see how Maria swept away this huge bridge, leaving more than 20 families cut off. After days without help, the community set up their own camp. They call themselves the Forgotten Ones.
It's not just here. Many people have been forgotten in this country, and their needs are great.
Out of necessity, once the river had gone down, one neighbor invented a system to move across food, fuel, batteries, whatever they could. Federal aid has been patchy.
They brought some things. The army dropped food from a helicopter, but getting through is difficult.
So Jacqueline got food over to her father. It was a relief for now, but these are difficult times.
The river flooded the town everywhere. This is something that really shocks you. Something that is so sad and heavy. Here in Puerto Rico, we are humble people, good people. We help each other. We are united, working together. But it is not easy, but we can. Now, we continue to wait for the reconstruction of the bridge.
Over on the side of the forgotten community, one of the neighbors' own machines is working non-stop to open up the pathways. The fuel comes in the precarious supermarket trolley.
In the countryside, we don't know anything. We don't have electricity. We are totally isolated without any communication. Right now, if in 5 hours there is a new hurricane, we wouldn't know. We are saying that the crisis wasn't just because of the hurricane. It is because of the government. The supplies are not coming. This is what is happening.
They've been like this for more than 20 days, and what gets to them most is the uncertainty about their future.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. A committee of Brazil's lower house has rejected a second set of corruption charges against President Michel Temer. Temer was accused of obstructing justice and criminal association by the former Attorney General Rodrigo Jano. But the Constitution and Justice Committee in Congress has voted by 39 to 26 to block the charges. They still, however, have to go to the full House for a definitive vote. Senators in Brazil voted on Tuesday to overturn the suspension of lawmaker Aécio Neves, a key ally of President Michel Temer, who was put under house arrest by the Supreme Court over corruption allegations. A former presidential candidate, Neves has been implicated on the damning Lava Jato corruption case, and according to reports, he was filmed soliciting over $600,000 from Josely Batista, chairman of the JBS Meatpacking Company. The Supreme Court suspension of Neves was overturned, 44 votes to 26. Former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff will seek to annul the impeachment that removed her from the presidency in 2016, based on a new confession that allegedly proves lawmakers bought votes to remove her from office. Rousseff's lawyer said the recent testimony demonstrates that the former president of the lower house paid lawmakers to vote in favor of her removal without evidence of crimes. The defense team will base their argument on these confessions from Lucio Finaro, who said in court he helped Eduardo Cunha buy votes from among the officials in the lower house. Families of landless workers have joined a day of protest across Brazil against the policies of President Michel Temer. Our correspondent, Nacho Limas, has been at the protest in Sao Paulo and sent this report.
We're live from the National Colonization and Agrarian Reform Institute in the city of Sao Paulo, where the landless workers movement, the MST, is insisting the government restores the budget for agrarian reform. What has happened is that the government of Michel Temer has cut 86.7% from next year's budget for land reform compared with last year. That's in a country where there's a great demand for land. That's why we're here with some of the 400 families protesting, and want to ask you, why are you protesting here?
We're protesting here to demand our rights as rural workers. A lot of families are struggling to be able to work on a little piece of land, and others who are already settled are asking for help to keep planting, to provide for their families with our produce from the fields.
This is what some families are telling us here. There are 400 families and they're expecting a bigger demonstration here in the city of Sao Paulo. They're also marching in other states of Brazil against this unelected government of Michel Temer, which is cutting several programs for access to food for the population, for toxic-free food produce, harvested by this movement of the landless workers. This is what we have at the moment.
That was Ignacio Limas in Sao Paulo. Divers from Argentina's Navy have found a body in the Chubut River, a kilometer and a half from where the activist Santiago Maldonado was last seen alive on August 1st. Officers from the criminal unit of the federal police, along with forensic experts, are traveling to the Department of Cuscamen to determine if the body is that of the missing activist. The body, dressed in dark clothes, was found hooked on the branches of willow trees in the river. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has the latest.
Te saludo, Rey. También saludamos a toda la audiencia de Telesur y estamos frente a la...
We are here in the square of the two congresses where indigenous communities have been camping out since a couple of days ago. They are demanding a law that recognizes their lands, but also the reappearance, alive, of Santiago Maldonado. After news came out that a body was found in the area of Cuscamen, close to Esquel, in the province of Chubut, which may be the body of this young activist who was forcibly disappeared on August 1st. The indigenous communities have expectations, questions and doubts. It is also a special week because on Sunday there will be elections here in the capital, but also because of what it means exactly, that a body has been found in an area that was already searched 3 times by the security forces. And especially because it is so close to the area of the repression carried out by the police on the 1st of August. They are also demanding concrete answers from Mauricio Macri's government, which so far keeps saying that they were not part of the crackdown during that protest by the Mapuche community in Chubut. So there's a lot of expectation surrounding the investigations by the forensic anthropologist, this prestigious group that has worked on the search for the people who disappeared under the dictatorship. Now they have the responsibility to give all of the information related to the case, when and how this person died, and if the body that was just found a few hours ago next to Chubut River is really that of Santiago Maldonado. So a lot of expectations on the news coming out in the next hours. We'll keep you up to date.
Edgardo Esteban reporting from Argentina. Peruvian police have seized a shipment of 1.3 tons of synthetic tubes made with cocaine that were shipped to Mexico. The Peruvian authorities said the sophisticated tubes were hollow cylinders made with a mixture of synthetic material and cocaine, making their smell nearly imperceptible to sniffer dogs. A gang of 17 suspected drug traffickers were detained in simultaneous operations around the country. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. China's President Xi Jinping has opened the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China in Beijing with a lengthy speech. He started with the promise that China would become a modern socialist country in a new prosperous era, and some of his other points included working towards easier ways for international investors to enter the Chinese market. Xi also reaffirmed China's commitment to the environment and the effort that the country is making to fight climate change.
The dream of the Chinese people is closely connected with the dreams of the peoples in the rest of the world. The Chinese dream can be realized only in a peaceful international environment and under a stable international order. We will uphold justice while pursuing shared interests and will foster new thinking in common, comprehensive, cooperative and sustainable security. We will pursue open, innovative and inclusive development that benefits everyone, boost cross-cultural exchanges characterized by harmony within diversity.
And now our reporter in Beijing, Sarah Diaz, has the latest update on the 19th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party.
The 19th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party has started. This is the biggest event of the political organization. This year, 2,000 delegates will choose members of the Central Committee, which is formed by more than 200 people. From them, 24 delegates will be selected to become members of the Politburo. And later, the members of the Standing Committee will be chosen. These are basically the core of the Chinese government. That's why this National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party is so important. Xi Jinping's speech was the highlight of the opening event, in which he talked about the changes the country has undergone over the past 5 years. He spoke on how the Chinese government lifted over 60 million people out of poverty, which reaffirms the government's goal to eradicate rural poverty by the year 2020. Xi Jinping also commented that the social economic transformation of China, that is the most important developing country in the globe, and thus he asked delegates to take into account that the nation wants to become a modern socialist country by mid-21st century, specifically after the year 2035. China has entered a new era, emphasized by Xi Jinping. He refers about initiatives like Belt and Road, which proposes the economical and commercial interconnection between Asian, African and European nations throughout the old Silk Road. The Chinese president also emphasized the importance of energizing the market, supporting investment and infrastructure, promoting internal consumption as a tool to steadily grow the country's economy. During the opening event, he also mentioned China's diplomatic achievements in international meetings like the G20 summit in Hangzhou or the BRICS summit in Xiamen. The National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party occurs at a key moment for the organization, as it is fighting against corruption in a campaign that has affected top officials as well as local leaders. During his speech at the opening event, Xi Jinping made clear that China isn't acting under hegemonic purposes due to its fast economic growth. Undoubtedly, this National Congress of China's Communist Party is hugely important for the economical and social development of the country for the coming years.
Sarah Diaz reporting from Beijing. U.S. President Donald Trump's latest attempts at implementing a travel ban has been blocked for a second time. Judges from Hawaii and Maryland have now issued 2 separate restraining orders on the open-ended travel ban, effectively blocking it. Both judges labeled it a Muslim ban as the policy targets 6 Muslim nations: Libya, Yemen, Somalia, Iran, Syria and Chad. In late September, President Trump added North Koreans and some Venezuelan officials to the ban. The Iberian Peninsula is suffering the effects of hundreds of wildfires that blazed throughout northern Spain and neighboring Portugal in the last few days. flames spread across the Iberian countryside, which had been left extremely dry after an unusually hot summer and early autumn. The fires were fanned by strong winds left over from Hurricane Ophelia. Our correspondent Romina Piñate has more.
Saludos a toda nuestra audiencia, pues a pesar de esta terrible imagen que...
Besides the horrible landscape that I have behind me, which is the same in the center and north of Portugal and Galicia, we now have some good news. All of the fires in both countries have now been controlled. And that's thanks to the rain, because it hasn't stopped raining since last night, and because of that, all of the remaining active fires have now been extinguished. We can now assess the wider situation. Of the hundreds of fires that spread across the western Iberian Peninsula and left at least 41 people dead, here in Portugal, over 316,000 hectares have been ravaged by the fires. In Galicia, 4 people have been confirmed dead, and around 12,000 hectares were on fire. The cause of the fire remains unknown. This morning, a person who may have been involved in the fire was detained. Yesterday, the police found some helium balloons that could have been the devices that caused the fires. Today, Portugal's Interior Minister resigned due to the bad management of the fires. However, in the neighboring Spain, no one has taken any responsibility. We have spoken to the firemen and with the residents, and everyone has said that the bad forest maintenance policies are the reasons that the fires spread so easily. The lack of resources made this not only a natural disaster, but a social disaster.
Thanks to Romina Piñate for that report. Now, here's a roundup of news making headlines across the world.
Iraqi security forces announced that they had completely taken back control of the Kurdish-held region of Kirkuk following an offensive that was launched in response to the Kurdish referendum in September. Following a swift operation, Iraqi forces received little resistance as Kurdish forces were pushed from the region. Iraqi forces have claimed the lucrative oil fields from the region, which will deal a major blow to the Kurdish economic prosperity. On September 25th of this year, a Kurdish independence referendum was held with a resounding yes vote being declared. However, Baghdad and Iraq's regional neighbours Turkey and Iran have denounced the result, calling it unconstitutional, and have stepped up efforts to quell Kurdish gains in the region. The Syrian army and its allies advanced further into Deir ez-Zor, one of the last remaining bastions of the Islamic State group in Syria. With the support of Russian air power and Iranian-backed groups, the Syrian army edges closer to defeating IS in Syria, after the group began seizing territory back in 2014.
The army has carried out an operation which enabled it to reach Savame al-Hub and the paper factory, and we are moving left towards al-Husseini. By reaching this line, we are now surrounding Daesh militants located in some areas of Deir ez-Zor and other locations.
Israeli forces raided 8 Palestinian media companies across the West Bank overnight, confiscating equipment and closing some of the stations down, claiming the stations dispense incitement materials against Israel which are encouraging attacks. Palestinian authorities have hit back, saying the channel's main objectives are to expose the occupation's crimes. Authorities began removing statues of 2 leaders of the Confederacy in Kentucky City in the midst of a national debate over the memorials. The removal comes following a city council vote back in August, which approved the taking down of the statues. The vote to remove the statues came shortly after the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, where white nationalists protesting the removal of Confederate statues clashed with counter-protesters. Anti-government protesters are calling for the end of President Faure Gazimbi's family's 50-year rule in Lomé. Protesters clashed with security forces at the start of 2 days of protests, which have been called by the country's opposition. Gazimbi has ruled the West African nation since his father died in 2005, who was in power for 38 years. Protesters which are rallying in the capital have defied a government-imposed ban on demonstrations.
We've come to the end of this evening's news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, which is telesiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesio English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.